Another sample music featuring clarinetist James Campbell. That was the Suite Hebraic number 1 for clarinet. And he was joined by, among others, Valerie Tryon there on the piano, music by Glick. Now they're going to be performing Glick tomorrow night. Not that piece. They're doing the Klezmer Wedding. And I played that because James is in town. A little bit about James Campbell, in case you're not familiar with him. He's a clarinet player known as Canada's preeminent clarinetist and wind soloist. He's followed his muse to 5 television specials, more than 40 recordings, over 30 works commissioned, a Juno Award from the album I played earlier, Stolen Gems, Canada's Artist of the Year, Queen's Golden Jubilee Medal, and the Order of Canada as well. And a little side note, he even replaced an ailing Benny Goodman early on in his career with the Amadeus Quartet down in California, because he can play just about any style. And he's here in the studio. Good morning, James.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Nice to have you here. I know you've been with us before, the first time we've had a chance to chat live on air.
Yes, I remember. I think you just opened when I came in about a year and a half. I was here when the Junos were here.
Exactly, yeah.
And it was sure exciting to come in here and feel it. And I still feel a lot of excitement in the room here.
Oh, that's good.
It's wonderful.
I'm glad. So welcome back to Winnipeg again.
Thank you.
You seem to come through town often, which is really nice to see. Every different festival wants you back, you know.
Well, it's one of my more or less regular places. I was here just actually at the end of March for the Virtuosi concerts with a group called Octagon.
That's right, and Martin Bieber.
And it's always nice to come back.
Mm-hmm. So you've got a busy schedule lined up for this week, right?
This week, well, Paul Marlene keeps us busy. We're playing every night.
Every night.
And that it sounds like a lot of work, but it's actually, I should say, it's a lot of play. Because musicians do play music. We don't work music, so it's enjoyable.
And I guess with the Chamber Music Festival as well, I mean, as opposed to playing with a big orchestra, it's a bit of a different feeling, right?
Oh, it's like family. It's very in a way, it's like musicians. Some people, get together and go on a fishing trip, and go out and musicians get together and play chamber music. So it's that kind of feel. And when you're dealing with some of the great composers as well, it's really it's more than a fishing trip for us.
It's funny you mentioned fishing trip. I remember Tom Waits had a little fishing show where he'd bring musicians on with him, like great, really well-known musician. They do a fishing trip together. Okay. So
there you go.
So let's talk about the music you're going to be performing at the Agassiz Chamber Music Festival. It's a real wide variety of things. I'm looking at tomorrow night. It's almost like the music I just played. It's called Hasidic Rhapsody is the name of the show tomorrow night, with all Jewish-themed music.
It's actually a wonderful kind of music, and I love playing it. To really do the klezmer properly, one would have to spend their whole life doing it. I mean, the really great klezmer players are terrific. So I get to pretend I can play klezmer. And the one particular piece called Klezmer Wedding by Cyril Irving Glick, the person who wrote the piece you just heard, is really fun. He wrote it for some friends of his, and I had the honor of doing the premiere of the piece, and it's become one of his hits now. And it starts with a good old Klezmer of Gliss, and off it goes, and it's dancing. And when we've played it at different times in the past, the audience has been known to clap along.
Wow, and dance along and lift people up in chairs.
Well, it's a little hard for some of them to get out of the chairs, but sometimes they'll actually get into it and clap. It's really quite a lot of fun.
Primarily, you're known as a classical clarinetist, and we know that about you. I mean, that's sort of, I guess, was that your upbringing? Was classical music your upbringing?
I actually started in jazz, but I actually wanted to be a jazz saxophone player, but I kind of got changed into clarinet. And then as I went to school and the career developed, classical music took over, and I do consider myself a classical clarinet player who likes to explore jazz.
Now, it's not that common, or in general not that easy to cross over from classical to jazz. You have a background in jazz, as you say, and that obviously helps you quite a bit.
Well, to be a really great jazz player, you have to spend your whole life at it. It's a very, very complicated thing. A lot of people think, jazz, you just get together and be free and play.
Improvise and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
It's a tremendous amount of theory and a tremendous amount of listening. And so I do as much of that as I can. So that's why I say I play at jazz.
Play at jazz,
I play at jazz, and nobody seems to complain too much. But but if in fact maybe if I ever retire from classical playing, I'll retire and become a jazz player and just spend all the time doing that.
So you hear that if you're in the audience and he plays some jazz, you can, don't heckle him, but be critical if you want.
Well, actually, on Friday night I will be playing some jazz. There's a piece called Three Faces of Ebony, which was written for me by the Edmonton composer Alan Gilliland. And on that one, actually, it's there's three movements. One movement's classical, one movement's jazz. I'll be improvising, playing jazz, and the last movement is a klezmer, another called Clarinet. It's another klezmer piece, and there actually I get to improvise a cadenza at the beginning, and then go, and that's a lot of fun to do.
How difficult is it to transition from playing a classical to a jazz to a klezmer in one go? Well,
I just try to listen to as many of those styles as I can and come as close as I can. And again, as I said, I get to pretend I'm doing it.
Well, you do a fine job, I must say. Who are some of your, you say you have to listen to you listen to jazz and you listen to klezmer music. Who are some of your inspirations in jazz and klezmer music?
Well, klezmer is Georg Feigman is probably the most famous guy, and there's a very, very special way of playing clarinet. It's incredibly sensitive and emotional way of playing. It's really, I recommend anybody try to find him and listen to him. Mm-hmm. And in jazz, there's many. I mean, I started with Benny Goodman. I think actually he's still probably the greatest as a clarinetist and a jazz player. And Buddy DeFranco has always been one of my heroes. Phil Nimmons, the great Canadian jazz player.
Just had his birthday, 92nd birthday recently.
And we actually play together sometimes, and I tell you, that's a thrill, because growing up, he was my hero. He was my jazz hero. And we actually get to play together now, and so that's fun. And at 92, he still plays, and we actually played together just a few months ago, and he really plays. I had to go some to keep up.
Something to aspire to, huh?
Oh,
well, you got a few years to get there,
For sure, yeah. I'll keep working. Maybe when I'm 92, I'll be able to do that.
I look forward to chatting with you when you're 92.
Here we are.
I've got James Campbell in the studio. He's in town with the 2015 Agassiz Chamber Music Festival. As he said, he's busy pretty much every night, and I get the feeling you're busy just 365 days a year. I know that you're busy performing and you still record lots. You also have something called the Festival of the Sound. You're the artistic director,
yes.
And you've been for a long time.
I have been. I have been for 30 years. And it now has, it's a 3-week festival in Ontario, in Parry Sound. And it's, Anton Querty started it and ran it for 5 years. And then he asked me to take over, and I'm still there. And it's grown into a 3-week festival. We do about 60 concerts in 3 weeks. So it's turned into a big festival. So I kind of like to joke that it's my hobby putting that together, which means basically when I'm in an airplane I do my thinking.
Yeah,
about
it's a full-time hobby almost.
It could easily be, but there's some wonderful support system there.
And you also built a hall there fairly recently.
We built a hall,
too.
yeah, about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We opened a hall, which is a wonderful, wonderful hall. And Bobby Orr's from Parry Sound, so the town wanted to have a museum for Bobby Orr, and we wanted a concert hall. So we thought, well, let's get together. So in one building there's a Bobby Orr Hockey Hall of Fame, and then on the other side of the lobby is a world-class concert hall.
It's got to be the only place in the world that hooks hockey with classical music, I think.
Well, for Parry Sound, it's just a total natural. It's a natural natural mix for Parry Sound.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And as I said, you're very busy. What do you like to do in your spare time? I know you also play music with your son. Your son is a guitarist, and you mentioned to me he was just in town recently.
He was
too.
With Laila Bayali. He was part of the band there, and we still play quite a bit, and we record, and in fact last month we did 10 shows together.
Wow. And
it's a joy. Yeah, it's a joy. And he's a real jazz musician, I see. And so he gets in my face, He said, Dad,
as every son should with their father.
You're not in the pocket on that one.
Well, I know I mentioned off air that I love to play. It's called As You Near Me.
Yes,
correct?
That's
yeah,
right.
And it's a great CD.
Yeah. No, it's my favorite CD, but for reasons more than just music.
You like to go fishing?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like take your son fishing.
Take your son fishing in the studio.
In the studio.
Yeah. Well, it's a real pleasure to have you on the air and have you back in town. And as I say, there's a real great lineup of shows, including there's one tomorrow night, Thursday, Friday. It goes all the way till Friday, June 12th, and looks like you're busy every night.
We're busy every night, but happily busy every night.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, thank you very much for coming in this morning.
My pleasure.
I've been chatting with James Campbell, the wonderful clarinetist, jazz, kind of klezmer, but definitely classical clarinetist. And again, he's in town for the 2015 Agassiz Chamber Music Festival. Definitely check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun performances tomorrow night. I know for sure he's doing a couple works. Looks like Stuczewski, Hasidic Rhapsody. He's doing Glick's Klezmer Wedding. And then the whole bunch of things called Folklore Thursday night and Friday. Another slate of busy concerts. I'm going to give you another example of something that he likes to play. Here is a work, Sonata for Clarinet. It's John York with James Campbell.